this work? Does this work? Okay, everything works. Awesome. Hi, this is my first time at Monitorama for a pretty good reason, which is that I hate monitoring. Like a lot. In my opinion, there's nothing more depressing than backups and monitoring. They're boring, nobody needs them until something goes wrong. It's just a terrible way to spend your life. I just recently co-founded a company, which is not a monitoring company, for similarly good reasons. But here I am, and when I was trying to decide about what to talk about, having not been here before, I went and I watched a bunch of talks from last year, and the one that really grabbed me, that I really want to pick up and kind of run with, is Greg's. Monitoring is dead. Rest in peace. I'll give you like the 2-minute recap of Greg's talk. He defined monitoring, he defined observability, and he talked a little bit about all the terrible things. He talked about the inglorious past where everybody was like mailing themselves, the output of CPU stat, and like, oh God, I remember that too. It was terrible, no wonder I hate it. Monitoring, as he defined, I think this is a good definition. It's the action of observing and checking the behavior and outputs of a system and its components over time. And then he defined observability as a system is observable if you can determine the behavior of a system based on its outputs. And it was a great talk, but it really got interesting right towards the end, and I was like, yeah, drive a stake through it, like you got it, you're on it. And Greg is just too nice of a guy. He's just like, oh, but the future, and I'm just like, roar! Fortunately, I'm not nice at all. So I'm gonna pick up where he left off. But I will point out that if you look at your schedule, like 2016 Monitorama versus 2017 Monitorama, Jason was asking me to talk about this too because there is a seismic shift underway. A substantial percentage, something like 30–40% of the talks that I caught up, that I was tallying up are about how we deal with complex systems. I'll say a little bit more about that. But I did want to put a slight correction. Monitoring is not necessarily part of building software. Instrumentation has to be part of building software. The monitoring part, said right there in the definition, it's checking it. You don't actually have to check it. Maybe you shouldn't. The last couple of slides were the ones I loved. He said, build better tools. We have to build better tools. And I think that a big part of that is shedding a lot of the assumptions, the dead ends that come with monitoring, and thinking about it in much more of an exploratory, a way that we associate with debugging, not that we associate with monitoring. And distributed systems. I love this. I've been thinking about this so much. We have to think about the distributed systems and build our systems like they are distributed systems, whether or not they're distributed, because like the computer science that goes along with distributed systems is all about complex systems and how to fail gracefully, and how to tell if something is not normal and all this stuff. It's awesome. And like look at what we have to deal with. Like the complexity is just it's exploding. Like LAMP stack, cool. You have an app, you have a database. Like I remember when the P was Perl. Whoa! And then it was like, okay, Perl or Python or PHP, and the database was like, you got your choice between MySQL and Postgres, Things get better, and as they get better, they get way more complicated. Like, look at the proliferation of clients that we have to deal with. Look at the sheer number of combinations of mobile devices times operating systems times firmware times language packs times locations times, and like IoT is just around the corner. It's only gonna get better. Job security. Distributed systems failure. Distributed systems failures will help you future-proof your systems. Yeah. So, like, the last thing, I don't want to just get up here and be super pedantic about terms, Language wars are fun. That's not actually what I'm here to do today. I've hired you to start a war, I love that quote. But we do kind of have to pay attention to what they mean so that we have a way of distinguishing between disciplines, right? And I'll define monitoring the way Greg did, and I'll say that observability is how we make complex systems tractable. So let's start with some examples. The kinds of like the familiar questions and problems, and then some of the distinctly newer kinds. Our tools were designed in the LAMP stack era. Like, we're still using them to this day. They're getting better and better, but they show their roots, right? They show their roots. Metrics and logs were designed for a very different era. Schemas, indexes, anything that has a schema in it or an index on it that is guessing you trying to get you to guess what data you're going to need a year from now is broken. They have their tells. They show their roots. And this is where silos come from. So like we have these little tools and like metrics and logs, and we build dashboards out of them. Every team has a zillion dashboards, like dashboards of dashboards of dashboards. You know, every post-mortem includes I'm going to make a dashboard for that, so I'll find it faster next time. So they're like artifacts of past failures. Every dashboard, you can quote me on that. Dashboards are terrible. They're terrible. Dashboards are where you stop. It's a stopping point. It's a thing that you hang on your wall. And I love that we're now trying to make our dashboards like explorable. But if you're dealing with aggregated data, don't talk to me. You have to have the raw data if you're exploring reality. So here's an example of the kind of problem that you've probably debugged as many times as I have. Photos are loading slowly for some people. What's wrong? You know? And this has traditionally not been too hard to figure out because you got your components, right? Apt here, you know, has very distinct, you know, symptoms, a number of possible causes. So you add some monitoring checks. Cool. Database falling over. Well, you find the bad queries, add some monitoring checks. Cool. A lot of these involve, you know, SSHing into a node. That's an anti-pattern right there. Think about all the different alerts you've written to page you for just this tiny list of problems. And then people wonder why they don't get any sleep. And what happens after this? Like, we have a post-mortem and we say things like, you know, we'll find this faster the next time. We're stuck in this pattern of, you know, build a system, look at it, predict how it will fail, or have its failures inflicted upon us, and then try to scramble after the fact to remediate it. So in the future, it looks more like this. You've got 50, 60 services, you've got half a dozen databases, you know, God knows how many different device types, and like, these are all interesting, sometimes difficult. It's usually not too hard to figure out what the problem is, but it can be, actually that's backwards. It's incredibly hard to figure out what the problem is. Oh, sorry. Last minute notes are wrong, as they often are. It's really hard to figure out what the problem is. The solution is easy once you know the question. Right? As soon as you know what the question is, but like figuring out which combination of, you know, so there's this like low-level complaints constantly because users, right? Like sometimes it's like, ooh, I sense a bubble up in the number of complaints that are hitting me. But they can be caused by anything, right? All three of these things can be happening at the same time right now at a low level. And sometimes people will complain about them. Sometimes people will have the same goddamn complaints, but they just didn't turn their Wi-Fi on. You know, it's very hard to work backwards and figure out what the actual problem is. So what do I even monitor for? I cannot pre-generate a dashboard for every combination of every user's iPhone and, you know, operating system. I don't even want to try. Your system is never up. All those things, the gremlins are there. They're there whether you know about them or not. Like a check, a paging alert is just an attempt to tell you about something. You know that good feeling that you get when you look at your dashboard and you see it all green? It's a lie. You shouldn't believe it. It's false confidence. And it's a lie that turns toxic with distributed systems because you start to believe that if you haven't graphed it, it isn't there, it doesn't exist. At Parse, like, you know, we had 60,000 mobile apps when we were acquired by Facebook, a million by the time I left. And like, things would happen where, you know, a user would write in and be like, why is Parse down? And I'd be like, Parse is not down. Look at my beautiful fucking wall full of dashboards that shows how fucking not down parse is. Well, they don't care. It would be something like, they had deployed a query that only gets hit when their users hit the login endpoint and does 5 full table scans. Parse is down, no one can log in. And the longer that I just argue with them about the nature of reality, the more credibility I lose, right? We needed a system that would let us explore all of those interwoven dependencies in real time. Anything else is just not acceptable. You don't have the detail you need today to answer arbitrary questions, most of you. And you don't have the right tools. And listening to the talks today, which have been spectacular, I keep wanting to say, raise your standards. Dream bigger. I really think that we can do more. And I don't say this just because I'm a vendor who's selling something, but I am a vendor who's selling something. Raise your hands if you're in Honeycomb. Okay, you can get demos from those people, whatever. This is not a sales talk, though. This is like a call for help. This is a cry for help. Because this freight train of complexity is hitting all of you, just like me. You're not sleeping through the night either. I know this because Alice told me. And the problems that you have can mostly not be addressed by metrics and by logs. A little bit better by logs than by metrics. Event-driven debugging systems are the way of the future. Then you get to have nice things like read-time aggregation so that you can have percentiles. God, it blows my mind that this is super key, right? Like, aggregates disguise problems. They take all that nice event data that you have about what's happening, and they smush it together in an interval, and then throw everything away. So you can have a dot with some tags that you've intentionally it's in the future, the answers get tougher. Like 50 tags, 50 bits of detail about what happens to be happening in this incredibly rich system is not enough. 200 isn't enough. Answers get tougher. Monitoring is dead. So let's talk about events. And let me be clear, the future belongs to raw events, not rolled up events, not one event per request, many events fired off over the lifetime of every request through its path. There is no substitute, because you always have to be able to get back to that source of truth. What happened, right? And the more fine-grained you can get, the more you can interactively tease out these really complicated answers. Quit debugging with your eyeballs. Do you ever get tired eyes just from doing this with dashboards and graphs? Just I'm gonna get a bigger monitor so I can correlate that one with that one. Close my eyes, keep the memory in and scroll, or open a 99th tab, It's bad because not only does it wear out your poor little eyeballs, how do I say this? It's bad to debug with your eyeballs because you're just pattern matching. You're not actually debugging with data, right? You're not actually reasoning about what's happening and asking questions of your system, which makes you a better engineer, makes it replaceable in the awesome sense, meaning you can go to Hawaii, that kind of replaceable, right? I've been this engineer. I was on my honeymoon in Hawaii, and I get this call, parse is down. I'm I don't have my laptop, I'm on the beach, dude, But I just start asking questions of them, and after a few, I'm it's Redis, I can smell it. And they're like, well, we don't see anything about Redis. And I'm I know, but I built it, I can smell it, And it feels really good to be the hero once. After that, you're I want to go to goddamn Hawaii. It makes you replaceable, which is how you're supposed to build teams, right? It's really depressing, I think, to be a junior engineer and know that you can never catch up because it takes so much intuition about how the system works that you have to have from having it break on you a million times or having built it. We should be able to do a better job of teaching our skills. We should be able to do a better job of learning our systems. And you really have to be able to ask questions and explore. Aggregates destroy precious details. And it's not like you're looking for a needle in a haystack, Well, you are, but it's more like you're looking for a needle in a stack of needles. Like just a big, giant, flaming heap of needles. I don't know there's fire, but there probably is. A flaming heap of needles, and they're not just sitting there, right? They're all in motion, so it's more like a hurricane of flaming needles. That's your future, hurricanes, flaming needles. You need to tell stories, and events tell stories. Events, not only are events a more accurate representation of what's happening in your complex system, they map to how our brains work. You know, I've never met an engineer who has used both event-driven systems and metrics and dashboards who would ever go back to using metrics if they have a choice. I know lots of engineers who say, I would rather cut off my left arm than go back to using metrics. And logs, let's be clear, logs are sort of events if they're structured, right? It's like a baby event. Just grow up a little bit more, structure it, and then we've got a great event. Great event. Is somebody giving a rant about structured events here? Well, structuring events is nice. It's 2017. I do not want to see more string parsing. Like parsing on the server, parsing strings on the server. String parsing is not getting any faster, right? It's not getting any faster. It's that all those strings are the things that get clogged up all the time and need to turn all the data off so we can catch up and all the regular expressions and all our strings. Okay, if I wanted to grep through my logs, I could do that and not pay millions of dollars. Logs are useless until they're structured. The only time that an unstructured log is even acceptable is if a human is the only person who's only thing is meant to consume it. If you're talking between systems, if you're feeding into another system, it needs to be structured. So I was ranting about this on Twitter the other day, and Joe Beda, who I basically worship, and he wrote Kubernetes, he's super smart, he starts arguing with me about that. And then I figured, I'm like, oh, he's arguing with me about this, interesting, maybe I should reconsider. And then I realized it's because he was talking about his 8-year-old. He's like, no, my 8-year-old, I'm like, okay, that's fine. But by the time she's 10, I want to see it structured. Like, outliers are the entire point, right? Outliers are the point. Events tell a story. Events carry all that context with them. Events capture a lot more of the, and this happened, and then this happened, the ordering. They're easier to reason about. Arbitrarily wide events, yes. It's nice to have arbitrarily wide events because if you can handle the sparse data sets, then you don't have to worry about all those nasty schemas, indexes. So gnarly. You don't know what you don't know. That's why you should capture everything you can, right? Now, obviously, you can't handle infinite data. I think that in the future, we need to get used to capturing everything horizontally and getting used to sampling really intelligently vertically, which is kind of the opposite of how our tools do today, which is they incentivize us to trim, to fit into the server-side schema, and they try to keep everything this way, which is fine if you're building a billing system, but this is observability. Oh, there's that slide I was looking for. Flaming pile of needles. Yeah, when a user has a problem, they don't care about your aggregates. They don't care about what the system looked like for most people at that time. They don't care what the average experience was. They don't even care what the 99.98 percentile was. They care about theirs, right? And our tools don't really deliver that. How many of you still occasionally have to go back to AWS to download your logs from S3? Oh, I'm with you. It's sad. I mean, not actually with you, but I feel for you. Another thing that I really hate about tools is what's up with the, there's this segregation between, here's what runs for this vendor's tool. Here's what runs for my software that lets me explore my own code. And the streams are never to cross. I think that the entire separation between APM and log aggregators is mostly just shouldn't exist. You can't hunt outliers if your tool doesn't hunt outliers. Even with really good log aggregators, if you can't literally look for individual events, it's not good enough. The other thing that Gregory was ranting about that I really liked was when he was talking about how if your tools, he's like, none of the tools that I see here today are focused on letting you correlate events across disparate systems as like a first order. And I like literally was like, yes, thank you. It's so important because as systems get bigger and more complicated, more far-flung, like mobile app, half of its brain lives on the device, half of it lives in a database, some of it's in flight. Why are you jumping around like between systems just to try and figure out what's going on for one user or one event? Unknown unknowns are always going to be an engineering problem. The first time you see anything, it's an open-ended question about how long it's going to be until you can figure it out. It's terrifying. It's exciting. It's a rush. I love it. So do you. Don't lie. That's why we got into ops. It's super fun. But it's not fun if it stays that way, right? The second time you see the problem, it's a support problem. All you have to do is map what's happening to like the solution and execute on it, right? And our job as on-call engineers is to move as much as possible from that new terrifying like forest fire engineering problem bucket into the known unknowns, into the, oh, I can identify this. I have a runbook for this. I have a paging alert for this. Your entire goal. Because they're known unknowns. They aren't as mysterious. Debugging by intuition in senior engineers is a great way of obscuring so much of this that's going on. It's like dashboard blindness. And this is where aggregates can't take it. I love Prometheus is awesome. Like it's so cool. It's like the latest, best RRD tool that I think will ever be built. It's terrific. But I don't like that model. Reforming our relationship to on-call. Alice's talk was amazing. It shouldn't impact our lives, you know? It shouldn't be the kind of thing where we have to go, oh, that looks exciting. Oh, let me see if I'm on call that week. You know? This is another place I'm like, our standards need to be so much higher. You know why software engineers don't want to join us in the on-call rotation? Because it's miserable a lot of the time. And I don't blame them. And as soon as I realized I couldn't, you know, ask someone else to join me in the on-call rotation, it was a serious, like, I really like had to reconsider my own values. Like, do I value my time less than theirs? Hell no, I don't. Make it, like, this is the flip side of getting everyone to be on call. It can't be life-destroying. And I think that we can have drastically fewer paging alerts. I don't think this, I know this, I've seen this. At Facebook and elsewhere, you can have so much fewer paging alerts if you have tools that you trust to help you debug, to help you answer any question. And when I want to kill monitoring, like this is where I feel like I'm going with it. We need richer, better tools for debugging, for understanding, for exploring, open-ended, you know? Not ones that are like, is it this solution? Is it this solution? Is it this solution? Is it this solution? Which is what I feel like when I'm just going through the dashboard, you know? It has to be, you start with, and you go, what about this? You know, and what about this? And you're incorporating it into your exploration along the way. Metrics are awesome for certain things. Obviously, counters are terrific. Metrics are good for some things. I do think that you should have dashboards for your KPIs, by the way. But I do believe you can reduce your paging alerts to just KPIs. Just your KPIs. If you trust your ability to answer any question and explore it. We have to stop monitoring things and start instrumenting everything. Software engineers, and all of us, have to get used to. Here's another pathology of like old-fashioned monitoring. You don't look at it unless you get paged or alerted in some way, you know. And we considered that a best practice for a long time. You know, we tell people you shouldn't be having to watch, you know, your dashboard. You should only look at it when you get paged. No. If you're not looking at it when it's normal, you don't know what normal looks like. Right? I feel like this is, you know, you run your unit tests, looking at it on your laptop, that's the last time a lot of software engineers ever look at their systems, right? And if you're not running it while it's talking to real services, while it's using real data, while it's being interacted with by real users, you have no idea what's happening with your code. Yes, you're with me. If you're not observing it in production, yeah. High cardinality is not a nice to have. This is the other thing, and then I'm going to rush through because I've been ranting, as one does. High cardinality is not nice to have. This is mandatory. Being able to break down by one user, 1 in 10 million or whatever it is, 1 in 10 million users, and then break down by every combination of percentiles, endpoint, queries, is mandatory. You cannot accurately replicate the experience of a user unless you have this. And there are a couple of approaches out this that I'm aware of. There's ours, and there's the distributed tracing folks. Love their stuff. But let's raise the bar. This is where it starts. This is not where it ends. The software engineeringifying of operations and the operationalizing of software engineering goes both ways. So this is what I want in every tool that even claims to touch the space from now on. It must be exploratory. Context is everything. It must be based on asking questions, not on muscle memory. It must take, as a first-class citizen, the social nature of our jobs. Debugging is a social experience. The mechanics are social, even if it's just you and your past self and your future self. You're still leaving breadcrumbs for your drunk future self, and your drunk past self was leaving breadcrumbs for you. So, and solving new problems is cognitively expensive. It is hard. It is taxing. It's time-consuming. Sharing is not. Sharing is not. Losing less of our history, forgetting a little bit less, is not. It's cheap. And the future belongs to software engineers, to generalist software engineers. It really does. And I come from ops and DBA land, and we're not going away. They need us more than ever. But we exist on the other side of an API in the future. We are specialists. We are niche. We exist on the other side of the AWS API. Operational skills for software engineers are table stakes. I feel like you all are totally on board, so I'm just going to skip that. And it doesn't happen by accident. It does not happen by accident. It happens by valuing it. That means paying the same for ops as for software engineers. It means not promoting to senior engineers someone who does not know how to run their own stuff, someone who doesn't value that. Changing your processes and cultures, supporting your engineers. There are no easy problems in the future. There are only hard problems. The known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. There should only be unknown unknowns. You should never get paid to go, oh, that again. Oh, that again. Oh, but why are you getting paid? You know how to fix it. There should only be hard problems. Those are the ones that should page us. The stumpers, If the easy problems just don't page us, which is not to say that paging is the only kind of alert. It's just the only thing that shouldn't wake us up in the middle of the night, right? Other alerts, you got to fix, but they don't have to wake you up. Just get used to thinking about your system as though it's a distributed system, and you'll mostly be okay. I love this. Future is coming faster than we think. I didn't even realize until I started looking over the agenda for this year and comparing it to last year, and I was like, oh my God, people are really starting to grapple with these problems, and it's super cool. The future is coming faster than we think. It's time to kill monitoring off for good. Problems are coming. They're not optional. The solution shouldn't be either. Observability, I think you should think of it just like TDD for production. Never accept a pull request if you can't answer, how will we know how this is working? And a lot of that is just shedding the monitoring assumptions. I'll see you next year. Thanks.